ooh, she serving face. And I just tell them, cut me up and get down. They call us naughty 'cause we break all your rules down. And we just came to act the fool. Is that alright? Girl, that's alright. They be like, ooh, let them eat cake. But we eat wang and throw them bones on the ground. And I agree, but then agree, sit down. And I agree, don't forget to sit down. Cut it out, don't cut me down. Yeah, I wanna be. Just say, Jay, come on. Is it peculiar that he twerk in the mirror? And am I weird to dance alone late at night? And is it true we're all insane? And I just tell him no, we ain't and get down. I heard this life is just a play with no rehearsal. I wonder, will this be my final act tonight? And tell me what's the price of fame?
Hi, everybody. We made it. Hi, everyone. I'm Noreen Farrell, and I am the Executive Director of Equal Rights Advocates. And you have made it to our annual VIP reception. And if you're here, it's because you are gender justice superstars who have supported our work and our staff over the years. So we're so happy to have you. I have to say, I do miss, having our pre-reception gathering with wine at 11 a.m. at the Hilton. But what's so great about being here virtual right now is that so many people from across the country can join us. And so I really want to welcome you. I have my mom and my sisters here from New York and Mississippi, and my kids and my husband at home. And this is a great time for you to just introduce yourself, tell us where you're joining from, tell us your relation to ERA. We're just so excited to have you here. So look, we're heading into our gala at 4 o'clock, and we're going to talk all about the great work of Equal Rights Advocates and our wonderful clients and how we've all survived the year 2020. But we thought it'd be really fitting in this reception to honor the women who have made ERA and this movement what it is. And so I'm hoping that I can get all of them on screen. We have as my co-hosts of the VIP reception, ERA founders Nancy Davis and Wendy Williams. Woo! Let's do a chat cheer for that. I have my predecessor executive directors, Irma Herrera and Arcelia Hurtado here. Big shout out. We are going to be sharing some thoughts, and then we're going to be kicking off our fireside chat with our gala honorees, which include the incredible ERA board chair, Drusilla Ramey, who's also here live. Give a wave. And also our icons, Anita Hill and Dolores Huerta. So, and then Drew's going to be coming back after the fireside chat, and she is going to help me close out this so that everyone can get to the gala on time. Make sure you have your own wine or your mocktail ready, because we're going to kick it off by saying hi to Nancy Davis. Hi, Nancy.
Hello, Noreen.
Can you kick us off with a couple of words of inspiration as one of our treasured founders?
I'll do my best. First of all, greetings to everybody. Thank you so much for being here this evening. The late 60s and early 70s were a time of great turmoil across our nation. The civil rights movement was well underway, the Vietnam War, and the women's movement was getting started. Students were drafted, including men out of law school, and more women started attending law school. In the spring of 1969, Irma Kay gathered the Boat Hall women students together to talk about issues of interest and concern to them, among them being how to get started, courses about gender and the law, and to see from a woman's perspective, how the law was failing to address the issue of women's inequality. During that time, in my last year at Bolt Hall, the Bolt Hall Women's Association was born. And while we were looking for limited office space, we liberated the room required by state law to be provided for women who were, quote, indisposed because of their menstrual cycle. In September 1971, a conference about course materials for gender-based discrimination was held at Yale. Wendy, Mary, and I attended with Irma, who was prepared to teach the class in the coming year. The gathering was an auspicious augury of things to come, for it was at that conference that we met and were inspired by Barbara Babcock and Ruth Bader Ginsburg. On the flight home from New Haven, we fantasized about using our newly acquired legal abilities to fight for women's and girls' equality. Irma, our trusted and beloved mentor, said, "Do it." And we did. And here we are 45 years later. ERA is continuing the fight, and I am so proud of all that you do. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nancy. I could hear that story a million times. I'm going to grab from my desk at some point the picture of all of you that are on my desk in my office, if you can see it. All right, I'll work on that with the green screen. Wendy, hi, Wendy. So glad that you made it. Look, you argued the first Supreme Court case on behalf of Equal Rights Advocates in 1974. And I know that Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg was a really inspirational and treasured friend of yours, especially. And so I just was wondering, given her passing, if there's anything that you think that she can, just her spirit can bring as we're moving forward into 2021. And if folks want to share their favorite RBG quote in chat, that would be great while Wendy's talking. Uh-oh, can't hear you. Hey, Wendy, there's a little mute button on the bottom. There you go.
I'm unmuted, all right? Yeah. I met RBG at that conference in Yale. It was the first time I had been out of the state of California, actually. And at that point, it's hard to realize now, but there were only just a handful of articles that were written about women's legal rights. And there was a book that wasn't terrific, but it was out there, written by a nice guy from somewhere. And there were no case books, of course, addressing women's legal issues. Only a handful of courses on gender and law, which had just been invented, and which we were preparing to learn more about and take home to California. Nancy and I came home and joined Mary Dunlap, and we taught courses all around the Bay Area. We called it the Traveling Roadshow for a couple years before we ended up at Stanford. But back then, there was almost nothing, but as Nancy's described, there was this rising energy, the beginning of a women's legal movement. And I have to say that the essential point in thinking about Ruth Ginsburg is that at that point, the Supreme Court of the United States had never, not once, decided that there was a constitutional violation of women's equal rights, not once. Quite to the contrary, the court had declared that it would not stop the states from, quote, a sharp and that. I'm telling you this because RBG was at that conference, at the Yale conference. She was then a teacher at Rutgers Law School. And when I met her, she kind of lit up and she told me that she had recently submitted a brief on behalf of the ACLU in a new sex discrimination case that had been accepted by the Supreme Court. And in it, she had argued that laws that discriminated on the basis of sex should be treated like race discrimination. That is to say, suspect and presumptively invalid. And what knocked my socks off was what else RBG said. She told me that when her brief was in its final page proofs, she learned of a very recent case from the California Supreme Court that had unanimously struck down a law prohibiting women from tending bar unless their husbands owned the bar. Not the most dramatic or important case, but still. The case was called Sailor Inn versus Kirby, and supported the argument that Ruth was making to the Supreme Court that sexist suspects should be treated like race discrimination. And she told me that she had gotten Sailor Inn just as her brief was in its page proofs, and she was able to insert in her, and it's a little awkwardly inserted, it's clearly a last minute job, inserted in her brief a description of the case from California and its quite unusual conclusion about sex discrimination. So the reason that's knocked my socks off is because that opinion, which was unanimous by the California Supreme Court, amazing, was authored by Justice Raymond Peters. And as everybody knows who is old enough, Justice Peters was the most liberal member of the California Supreme Court. And we knew that because he had gotten the most no votes in Orange County in the previous round of elections. So I was working for him at the time. Actually, I was a clerk for that.
Just a coincidence.
Just a coincidence. And at the conference, I had just finished that year-long clerkship. And I, aided with an amicus brief from Irma Herrera, assisted by her law students, including Nancy Davis, had written an amicus brief, which was very helpful since the actual briefs of the parties in the case were not impressive, to say the least. That conference at Yale was in September of 1971. In November, on November 22nd, the Supreme Court decided that case that Ruth Ginsburg had briefed. The case was called Reed versus Reed. You've probably all heard of it. And it was the first case that the Supreme Court in its whole history had ever held a gender-based distinction in law unconstitutional. Now, Reed didn't go as far as we hoped and didn't go as far as the California Supreme Court, but it was definitely headed in the right direction. And we built upon that case for the rest of the 1970s.
Sure did.
So, what?
I said you sure did.
We built and built. And that was November 71. In December, the National ACLU Board, after an uprising from the women associated with the ACLU around the country, voted to establish a women's rights project. And in December also asked Ruth Ginsburg if she would produce the startup and work with it. She said she would. And then, to her surprise, she got a call from Columbia Law School, and they offered to steal her away from Rutgers and give her tenure and be their first woman law professor.
Hey, Wendy,
So,
do you mind if I interject here? Because, and we can pick up if we have time at the end, because we have this fireside chat that we've got to get in the next 20 minutes before the gala starts. Our lines are going to be cut off. So I'm so sorry, but we have to move on to the next piece because we're going to be cut off if we don't. So
Thank you.
can we do another Zoom where we bring it on back and get all of this good stuff in? Is everybody up for that? Everybody in the audience? Awesome.
You bet.
Arcelia and Irma, I am so grateful to have worked with you as our former EDs during my tenure. I know that you have some great thoughts that you want to maybe to share. Maybe we can do that during the chat about, you know, the community that we've built here at Equal Rights Advocates. Arcelia, we were on the lines protesting Prop 209. We know how important the election results are and how determinative they are of so many people's lives. I'm going to roll the fireside chat now, and we can come back and finish that up when we at the end, because we want to make sure that you get to hear this great conversation with Drew Ramey and Anita Hill and Dolores Huerta. Okay, so roll it, Tio.
I get to sit down with my Shiros today. Congratulations to each of you on your great honors today. And we're sitting down at such an incredible moment in our history, right? You know, we're in the middle of a global health pandemic that's threatening the health and work of many women and essential workers who are a big theme and honorees of our gala. We're sitting down as, you know, people are taking to the streets to protest police violence and racial injustice centuries in the making. But we're also here at a time of really inspirational organizing by women, including low-paid women who are most affected by inequities. We're sitting down here as a record number of women have been running for office. And we're sitting together at a moment where just weeks ago, the California legislature, in the midst of all of this, passed a series of bills that were sponsored by Equal Rights Advocates and really driven in partnership with so many people across the state that are now going to be helping 18.5 million women and other workers as they navigate the uncertainty of right now. People who need paid leave, people who need equal pay, they need job security, job supports, income supports. And as you think about your vision ahead, I thought it might be great to hear from you and find out who you draw strength from. You know, as you think about RBG, you know, and your own impact on the women's movement and the labor movement and the movement for racial justice, who was a personal icon for you in your life and why? And Dolores, I'd love to start with you.
Well, I guess I could start with my mother, who was a feminist and a businesswoman, the dominant person in our family because she had divorced my father, divorced my stepfather, married a third time, but she was definitely the leader, the leader in our family, but not only in our family, but in our community. Then I had other wonderful women in my life, like my Girl Scout leader, who I was a Girl Scout from the time I was 8 to the time I was 18 years old. And our Girl Scout troop was a very diverse troop, which is wonderful because we had, as I grew up in a very diverse neighborhood, and it was wonderful to be able to go to camp with people from different cultures that had different food and just grow up in that wonderful, wonderful ambience to really prepare myself and my thinking in terms of a global community and not a local community. And then, of course, once I learned how to organize them, I have to say the great Gloria Steinem, Eleanor Smeal, the head of the Feminist Majority Foundation, which I am a board member of, that really helped me understand in depth the role and the mission of the feminist movement, as of course did Gloria Steinem. So I was very, very fortunate. And then I have to also name a feminist, but who was a man named Fred Ross Sr., who taught myself and Cesar Chavez the skill of doing grassroots community organizing. And that was really the change in my life when I decided to quit teaching to become an organizer, because I learned that we have power, that ordinary people have power and that we can make changes, and we just come together and do the direct pressure, do the lobbying, the advocacy, like what you do, that this is how we make changes.
I love that. You named a lot of my own personal heroes and inspirations. How about you, Anita? And just so everyone knows, I have cleared being able to address these icons by their first name because I felt that was important. But how about you, Anita?
I could say so much about people who have inspired me, and I could give you a longer list, but I'm just going to start, of course, with my mother. And I would include with my mother, her friends who were part of our community in Oklahoma. I got my first leadership models from them. And even though their sphere was limited to the home and church, and there was not much opportunity for them to work outside of those spaces, they really did command respect, and they insisted on being part of decisions when they were being made. I'm going to just kind of expand and talk about Oklahoma and some people who you may have heard of and some who you haven't. There's a woman named Ada Lois-Scipio Fisher, who was the first woman to attend the University of Oklahoma Law School, where I later taught. She was a pioneer. She was discriminated against on the basis of race. She was denied admission to the law school in the 1940s. She sued and she won her suit and ultimately graduated from that school. And I say she paved the way not only for the future students, but also for future faculty to be a part of that experience. Now, the other woman is a woman named Clara Luper, who was also a pioneer. She led sit-ins and lunch counters in Oklahoma City before the lunch counter sit-ins were taking place throughout the South. So these were women who were pioneers for racial justice, as well as gender equality. And then finally, of course, another Oklahoman, Wilma Mankiller, who was herself an icon, as herself a force. And, so I like to think of it as my community leaders, my work has been made possible by being able to live as a full citizen in a state that had started out as a segregated state. And then to see a woman like Wilma Mankiller become the first chief of her tribe.
Wow, it sounds like you've got a great Oklahoma icon book that you could be writing. That's just such a great tribute to your state. Have these icons gotten you thinking, Drew, about your own? And also, while you're answering that, if you could kick off answering this question of, is there anybody emerging now as an icon for the next generation, in your view?
Well, let me just start out at answering the first question. And there's no question that, like Dolores and Anita, my personal icon was always my mother, Dr. Estelle Raimi, who was a impoverished New York Jew who rose to be a medical school professor, co-founder of American Women in Science, and a national feminist speaker. Her widowed and uneducated immigrant mother worked in a sweatshop, but as my mother put it, never doubted I could learn and do anything, however difficult. And because of her faith in me, I never doubted it either, she said. And my mother then paid it forward to her own children and to the thousands of women and people of color that she met along the way. She always regarded herself as very lucky in many ways. She leapt into national prominence because she engaged in a public debate that went viral, where with her endocrinological know-how and characteristic wit, she demolished her opponent, Dr. Edgar Berman, a Humphrey advisor who proclaimed that women could not hold high positions like President of the United States because of their raging hormonal imbalances. His first line in the debate, he insisted on going first, that tells you a little about Dr. Berman, was, "Don't get me wrong, I love women." My mother's first line in the debate was, "So did Henry VIII." As the banner headline in the Washington Post the next day, which went viral, read, "Dr. Raimi, figuratively speaking, mopped up the floor with Dr. Berman." So To quote my mother's great and good friend, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, from her eulogy at my mother's funeral, she said, Estelle was brilliant, brave, bold, radiantly and agelessly beautiful. Real advancement of women cannot come, she counseled, without understanding the problems of both men and women and the harmful stereotypes that impede both from realizing their full human potential. Scientific research shorn of bias and prejudice, she anticipated, could increase the capacity of both men and women to experience the joys of being alive. I really would have to say Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but AOC, to me, I think, I thought the rule of I was supposed to pick one is my ultimate choice. The fact that still in her 20s, she has blasted through all of the conventional wisdom about how to make it to Congress, and then has just killed it since then. I mean, she has become an absolute national beacon of courage, who has fought for critical legislation on every important issue that is facing this right now kind of benighted country and the staggering avalanche of brutal realities that face us.
I think she's among our top icons too. Anita, what would you add to that in terms of people that you've just been really inspired by and feel like they can really help the next generation?
The next generation, I can remember when I wasn't thinking about the next generation. I can remember when I was thinking that I was the next generation. And so this really is, this is a moment that is so important for those of us who have worked and who really realize that the work that we engage in I used to think it was a sprint toward equality. Then I started thinking of it as a marathon, and now I understand it's a relay. And so the people who are coming up behind us are so important. I was just at a conference last week called the Survivor Summit. And of course, I felt like I was surrounded by future icons as well as what I would say are current icons. I wanted to talk about two young people, and I'm just going to give their names. So, a woman, Prentice Hempel, who has started something called the Black Embodiment Initiative. And I will just say that she was just incredible at the conference and speaking and saying some very brave things about bias and sexism and violence within movement organizations. And then another young woman, Brianna Braveheart, a member of the Youth Indigenous activist, who has been so brave about talking about her own experience as an activist against sexual violence, but against violence that's being done to the land as well.
I would like to add to that list of icons because it's a woman I think who has been so incredibly remarkable in this critical time that we are living in is Nancy Pelosi.
Yes.
As the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and what she was able to do in the last election, and where we saw so many women that got elected to the House of Representatives, and the inspiration that she gives, and of course the young people like Greta, from Germany, that is leading the fight against global warming right now. I'm in California right now, where we're burning in California. And also Emma Gonzalez, the young Latina from Parkland, Florida, where they were fighting against gun violence also. So I think all these young women that are marching out there and protesting, to me, they're a great inspiration because they have so much courage and they're out there and they're speaking their mind and they're letting everybody know the things that we need to change in our country.
I wholeheartedly agree, and I'm so glad that you were part of the Survivor Summit. Equal Rights Advocates was really proud to be on the steering committee of the summit, and over 10,000 young people tuned into that summit, and I'm so grateful that you mentioned some of my sisters in the struggle and leaders. Anita, can I ask, coming out of 2020, this year, which has inspired so many memes. What do you think are the biggest threats and what are the biggest opportunities in this moment? And
what lessons can we draw from the past in thinking about that?
As you mentioned earlier, our goals are going to remain the same, no matter who's in the White House, what the political decisions that are made are. We're going to keep fighting, and I hope people will keep that in mind, that we have a lot of work to do. Whatever the outcomes are, we will have a lot of work to do. And I don't want us to give up and think things are over if the election turns out the way that we want it to. I also see so many opportunities that's really coming out of a youth that is now engaged and really engaged. I think that's, we give this generation, I guess we're up to Generation Z by now. We sort of give them, a bad name by saying that they're disengaged and they don't really get involved in movements. And I think that's absolutely not the case. So the opportunities now are endless because of a whole generation of people who are coming up and ready to get to work and are on fire and have their own ideas and ways of doing things that I think will push us to the next level.
I love that. Thank you so much. I would love to ask that question of you, Dolores, and then of you, Drew. And so the question is, coming out of 2020, what do you think are the biggest threats and the biggest opportunities, and what lessons do you draw on from your incredible legacy in thinking about that question?
Well, I know that after the Depression of the 30s, that the labor movement came out of the Depression, the Social Security, some benefits for workers, the National Labor Relations Law that gave workers the right to unionize and to organize. Out of the 60s, World War II, I'm 90 years old, so I lived through all of these, great critical moments in our history. Out of World War II, we had that women were in the workforce. We had the fact that the GIs were able to go to college and it was paid for by the government. Out of the 60s, we saw a cultural revolution, the environmental movement that started, the third wave of the women's movement, the gay movement that was started then. And so when we have these great critical moments in history, we see that something, they have a saying in Spanish that says there's nothing so bad that something good doesn't come out of it. And I think that is definitely going to happen here. I think we're going to definitely have one way or the other universal health care. It's going to happen because people are going to demand it because of the pandemic. We're going to have racial justice because people are demanding it right now. A whole different type of policing by quote unquote peace officers, because that is their legal name, peace officers, not killers, in terms of our police. And then I think that out of this moment that we are living, we are going to have a movement for economic equality, not just racial justice, but economic equality, because this is all right now in the forefront and people are living it, they're feeling it, and people are demanding change. While there are some people we know that want to keep the whole status quo, we know that that is not an option. Things are going to change. And the one great thing we see that women are leading the change. Women who started the Black Lives Matter movement, the Me Too movement, all of the women's marches. We have so many women now that are leaders in the labor movement, leaders of nonprofit organizations. And I like to quote Coretta Scott King. Coretta Scott King said, "We will never have peace in the world until women take power." And I really do believe that. And I think we're going to see that happen definitely in the lifetime of so many young women. It's going to happen.
I love that. I'm wearing my suffragettes white this evening, making sure that we're marking the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, which of course didn't mean that all women had access to the polls. It took us, another 45 years for that to happen, for us to remove racist barriers. But I so appreciate that nod to the past and all the places, all the journey that we have reached today. I think it's very empowering for us to think about as we look at the days ahead. Drew Ramey, you know intimately, because you're one of the leaders of the work of equal rights advocates, both at the state level and the multi-state level, and all the work we're doing in the courts and all the movement building we're doing. And I'm curious about how you reflect on that question, about, what is the biggest threat coming out of 2020 and our opportunities, and what are some of your own personal lessons that I think we've all benefited from, but I'm sure everyone in our audience would love to hear too.
Well, I echo what the two distinguished women icons before me have said, and that I do think the biggest threat is sort of panic, pessimism, fatalism, passivity. Napoleon, of all people, said that a leader is a dealer in hope. And I think that individuals like we're talking with today and organizations like Equal Rights Advocates are dealers in hope, that our mission is grounded in hope and based on, experience. Equal Rights Advocates was a co-founder of and is one of the leaders of an amazing coalition here in California of groups like farm worker women, groups like women who are custodians, groups like grocery workers, groups like childcare workers have come together with SEIU, with other labor leaders, and laborers in the trenches, and with various representatives of other areas of women's employment and education, and have come up with a women's agenda, both here and now we're exporting it nationally, that brings to the legislative arena an amazing panoply of legislation that is doing all the kinds of things that Noreen was talking about in pay equity and sexual harassment and Title IX stuff and so on. And there was a quote from Marian Wright Edelman that I have always loved. That she said, "The biggest lessons I learned in Mississippi in the 60s were about the strength and resiliency of the human spirit and the ability of determined people to resist and overcome injustice through personal and collective will." And I think that's exactly what has characterized the past, but particularly, I think, the present and our future.
Well, thank you for that. I want to say, as somebody who decided to go to law school after watching the Anita Hill hearings, and then who decided to become a labor lawyer before I was the executive director at ERA because of Dolores Huerta, and who has been able to lead such an incredible organization like Equal Rights Advocates because of the mentorship of Drusilla Ramey. It's been incredibly moving for me personally to talk to my icons and the icons of so many tonight. I really want to congratulate you on your award, and thank you on behalf of all of the women who have stepped forward to report sexual harassment because of Professor Hill, and for all of the farm workers and janitors and service workers and retail workers that we represent every day who have benefited from the true leadership of Dolores Huerta and the entire movement and generations of movement that have benefited from the Rameys. I just want to thank you for joining us today. And thank you for the common denominator in all of you, which I've heard is hope. Hope and vision, because we need that in spades. It has carried us very far, and it will carry us to our goal, because we're not done until there's justice for everyone. And I know you all believe that. I want to thank you and thank everyone, and have a great evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Wow, everyone. Everyone was sharing the RBG quotes, but I think now we're just going to have to start to share quotes from that incredible fireside chat. I know that Drew, congratulations on your award, and thank you so much for joining that and leading us and leading me. And Wendy and Irma and Nancy and Arcelia, thank you for joining me today. I know that you all know, because you've been in my shoes, that it is the people who support us day in and day out that allows us to be dealers in hope, right, Drew? So as we as we close out, I know Irma, you had something you wanted to say about the community built. So if you could just give us 30 seconds on that, I think it's so moving. And then I'll let Drew close out by thanking our sponsors. Oh, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
One of the things I love about ERA, there are many, but the generous supporters, people here on this call or Zoom, but the folks that have gone through the doors of ERA, hundreds of women and a few men who are out there in the world doing all sorts of interesting things, leading organizations, policy groups, teaching, writing, award-winning short stories. They have gone on to do amazing things. And I'm so pleased that I get to stay connected to just hundreds of people who have walked through ERA stores. And I love them all and I love you guys. And that's all I've got to say.
Drew, you want to join me in thanking our incredible supporters? And we've got countdown on 3 minutes before the gala starts.
Okay, I just want to join Noreen and everyone here in thanking the incredible support that we have from law firms, from corporate law departments, from civil rights leaders, community leaders, women and men all over this country. It's just been remarkable. And I want to thank you especially for your support today. And I thought that I would sort of end it with two things. One, the mayor of Paris, who is a bilingual, bicultural woman, of course, basically said, "Welcome back, America." And our magnificent president-elect Kamala Harris declared herself, "Now is when the real work begins, to unite our country and heal the soul of our nation." And to end with what I know that Dolores Huerta was our icon, fashioned the wonderful declaration, "Si se puede." Thank you.
And Drew, I like that. I love that you misspoke. And I think you said Kamala Harris was our president-elect.
Vice president. Well, it was, no, I think magnificent.
Appropriate with this crowd.
Oh, well.
Thank you, everyone. You've got 2 minutes to refill your glasses. Do what you got to do. Get yourself pumped up. We're getting going. You all have received your gala link. Last couple of minutes to throw some messages to everyone. Thank you so much. We really do this together. And Nancy, Wendy, you look what you've made. We stand on the shoulders of giants of the people on the screen. It was really my honor to have you all with me at the VIP reception.
Yes, it was.
We're closing. Wish I could shut my playboy mouth. How to turn my shirt
like the